What's up? What's up? I'm Dr. Omatma, host of Egg Meet Sperm, where we're busting fertility myths, sharing tangible tips for your fertility journey, and bringing you the most knowledgeable guests to support your journey to parenthood. This podcast is for both women and men because getting fertile as fuck is for both partners, don't you think? Remember, just listening to this podcast won't get you pregnant, but following the tips we share just may. Let's get you fertile AF so that you can co-create the family you dream of. And if your partner's not listening to this, make sure to share this episode with your partner. Hello and welcome to Egg Meet Sperm. My friend today is Stu Schaefer. He is a 20-year award-winning celebrity weight loss coach. He specializes in helping people put their body into the thermogenic state so they can burn fat 24/7 and lose weight like they did in their 20s. Stu struggled with anorexia in his teens, and when he overcame his eating disorder, he realized he wanted to help people create their perfect body in a healthy, sustainable way. Since then, Stu has helped thousands of people transform their body, empower themselves to create massive success in their life. Thank you so much, Stu, for what you do in the world. And thank you for joining me today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So let's kick it off. I imagine that people hear that intro and they say, what is the thermogenic state?
Yeah, right. So let me explain that and not many people know about this. In fact, I didn't either. But the way I discovered it is actually really interesting. And it was because you had mentioned that I had struggled with anorexia, and I did, and in high school. And for about a year and a half, I battled that. And when I came out of that, there was like this huge chain had been broken and this weight had been lifted. And it was the most amazing feeling. And that was the moment I decided I wanted to be a health coach. Okay, now fast forward a few years, I'd been coaching people and doing very well, by the way, helping people really transform their body and improve their health. Well, then one day I get a knock on my door. I'm sitting in my office finishing lunch, and this woman is huffing and puffing. Okay, she had just finished a workout. She's still sweaty and red in the face. And I go, hey, how's it going? And she's like, great. I need to lose between 30 and 50 pounds. And I've tried everything. I'll lose 3 to 5 pounds. I'll gain it back. And then I'll end up gaining 7 to 10 pounds, over the remainder of the year. And I see all your clients and they're getting great results. And I want to know if you can help me. Now, at this point, I was in my 20s. I was a little arrogant. I'm embarrassed to admit it. Okay. But we all go through those phases in our life. I thought, and this is what was going on in my head. Okay, this woman is clearly eating too much, not exercising correctly. And I said, of course I can help. I know what I'm talking about. Well, 5 weeks later, she hadn't lost a single pound. She's sitting in my office crying. She's across the desk from me. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I might as well just give up the profession. I'm a total failure. And I'm like, what is going on here? So I look across the table. I say, look, Ashley, we're going to figure this out. In fact, I'll work with you for free until we do. So I go on this 2-week deep dive research quest. And about 10 days into it, I find out what's happening. Ashley, and most people, by the way, have something called repressed metabolic syndrome. Okay, what is that? When you diet too much for too long, too extreme, you don't eat enough, you exercise too much, or a combination of all those things, essentially you shut your own body down. You repress your metabolism. So repressed metabolic syndrome. Well, there's only one way to get out of that. And what I learned is it's putting your body into the thermogenic state. And so that involves working out less and eating more. Totally counterintuitive. Now, how does this relate to fertility? Well, I'm about to explain that, but stay with me here. So I go back to Ashley and I go, Ashley, I figured out what's going on with you. And I explained what I just explained to you. And I said, we got to work out less and eat more. And she goes, what, are you nuts? There's no way I'm going to do that. I can't even lose a pound in the last 5 weeks. She was working out 2 hours a day. She was working out 2 hours a day and eating like 1,200 calories or less per day, counting everything super strict. She tried Atkins and keto and paleo. South Beach and the zone diet was popular back then. This was back in like
So many
2009, right?
diets.
She had tried everything. We tried 200 ounces of water a day, grapefruits, anything you could think of. We tried. Literally nothing was working. I convinced her to do this. And the first week, she lost 2 pounds. Okay. Now I'm like going, this is going to work. This is great. She's not excited though, because she had done the thing where she would lose 3 to 5 pounds, then she'd gain it back, and then she'd gain 7 more. So she's still saying, no, this is what always happens. Okay. Well, the next week, she lost another 2 pounds. And at the end of every week, the same thing. At the end of 12 weeks, she had lost 37 pounds of body fat. And she said, how is this possible? And I said, it's because we had done so many diets for so long. You'd starved yourself. You were trying to exercise to get the weight off. You were over exercising and you caused repressed metabolic syndrome. And what we just did was put you in the thermogenic state. How is this even relevant to fertility? Well, here's the deal. Not long after, well, first of all, I tried this with my other quote unquote normal clients who were already losing weight. I thought, gosh, if that works so well with Ashley, how would it work with my clients who are already doing well? And it worked amazing. Not only did they start losing weight faster, they were never hungry. Their energy went through the roof. Their cravings vanished. Their hormones balanced. So it was like you couldn't get any better. Now, not long after, I had a woman named Stephanie who came to me because she couldn't get pregnant. And the doctor said, look, you really need to lose weight. This is really impacting your fertility. And so she said, well, can we lose weight? But I need it to be in a way that's going to be healthy because I'm trying to have a baby. And I said, aha, I know what to do here because I worked with all these women. The Thermogenic State was optimizing their health rather than stealing from their health like most diets. So in 3 months, Steph was able to lose somewhere around 30 pounds of body fat. I can't remember the exact numbers, somewhere around 28, 29 pounds of body fat. But she never starved herself. In fact, she was eating more food than she said she had ever eaten before, and a variety of food. She wasn't restricting calories. She wasn't restricting food groups. And she was only working out 30 minutes a day. Remember when I told you about Ashley was working out 2 hours? I scaled her down to 45 minutes a day, and she was able to lose all the weight. So Stephanie now was doing the appropriate amount of exercise so that she wouldn't overstress her body and eating all the right foods and flooding her body with nutrients. So she lost the weight, balanced her body, balanced her hormones, and she got pregnant. It was like awesome.
Amazing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Healthy baby, perfect pregnancy.
Yeah. So I think there's a few things that you said in there that are really key. One is that, yes, some of the listeners might be wondering, what does weight loss have to do with me? But in reality, like I just saw a study 3 days ago, literally, that is talking about how obesity is connected to fertility. And there's a lot of debate in this world around, is it body shaming or is it actual like health related things? In my experience, it's really helpful to have healthy body mass index. It is important. However, what I resonate with you on is that how you get there is also equally important. If you go on a juice fast that depletes your body of minerals, raises your insulin and your blood sugar, that's not supporting your fertility. When people come to me and say, oh, I have like 6 months before my IVF cycle and I need to drop 30 pounds, can you help me? Like that is not the fast path, quote unquote, of deprivation and nutrient depletion is really not going to get them closer to the goal because they absolutely need to have the right balance of foods going in to be able to give the body the signal that they are in a healthy state enough to be able to conceive. So I like what you're saying there in terms of the thermogenic state really supports not having to cut out food groups, not having to do these extreme diets. Most diets are very extreme.
Most diets are actually unhealthy. And what happens is this. A person will get into what I call the vicious cycle. Now, I want to make a distinction, Amatma, because what you said was brilliant. When Steph came to me, it wasn't because she was trying to fit into some bathing suit. Her doctor told her, your body fat percent is too high. You need to get this down, not only to increase your fertility, but to have a healthy pregnancy. You said BMI, body mass index. I don't even use BMI because that's antiquated, but it's body fat percentage. How much body fat are you carrying on your body? And yeah, are there different reasons that people may want to lose weight? Of course. Some, it might be a aesthetic thing. Some, it might be confidence thing. Some, it might be joint pain or just being functional. Some, it might be a health, cholesterol, blood pressure. And some, it might be a fertility piece, right? I want to have a baby. I want to have a healthy pregnancy. And I want my baby to be healthy when they're born. And this isn't going to happen if my body fat levels are too high. And
Absolutely.
So yes, can it be aesthetic? Absolutely. Can it also be optimizing health? Yes. And that's why when I'm talking about this thermogenic state, it checks both boxes. And I have yet to see a diet that does that, because most diets will restrict. Here's the deal. There's something called the food quadrant. Okay. Now this is really interesting. The food quadrant says there's 4 pieces of nutrition. Number 1, you have what you're eating. Number 2, you have how much. Okay. This is the calories. Number 3 is the timing of foods through the day. And number 4 is the combination of foods at each meal. Now, let me tell you, this is where things get interesting. The combination of foods at each meal is by far the most important. However, of the 4 pieces of nutrition, guess what? Diets only focus on 1, 2 at the most. They either focus on what to eat or how much to eat. And if that's all you focus on, you only have 2 options. You can restrict calories or you can restrict foods. And neither of those are good. Neither of those are healthy. And neither of those will set you up for long-term success. When you open up the other 50%, when should I eat certain foods during the day and when should I not? Breakfast should be different than lunch, and that should be different than dinner. And how do I combine the right foods at each meal to create the right chemical reaction in my body? This is key. You're in the wellness industry. You know this. Most people kind of know this, but here's the problem. I got trained just like anybody else would get trained. And when I got my training, all they talked about was the only way to lose weight is a calorie deficit.
Calorie restriction.
Okay? Now, here's what's interesting. If you were to line up 100 experts, including doctors, 99 out of 100 of those experts would tell you this, that the only way to lose weight is calorie deficit. Not just one way, the only way. Okay, well, here's what's interesting. In the same breath, a doctor will tell you that every food has a different chemical reaction in your body. Even different types of carbs have different chemical reactions in the body. They affect your hormones differently. So for someone to say a calorie is a calorie, they don't know what's going on. They don't know how the body works. So the key is this. You eat the right foods in the right combination at the right time of day to get the reaction you want. And what are most people looking for? Number 1, they want to get their body to burn fat. And number 2, they want to optimize their health. This means balancing their hormones, having healthy blood sugar, blood pressure, cholesterol, and other characteristics. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's just that no one teaches this. Nobody knows about this. I've gone through 20 years of trial and error. Error after error. And just examples like Ashley, where failure after failure. But that's the way you figure it out, is practical testing, not theory and not another diet.
Absolutely. So do you find in your experience that the combination of the right food at the right time is unique to each person, or is it pretty consistent through most people?
There's a lot of consistencies, okay? Most people physiologically, their body reacts the same way, okay? If someone eats sugar, their blood sugar goes up, their body releases insulin. That's just how the body works. Now, maybe you have an autoimmune, which causes a disconnect there, or diabetes, which causes a disconnect there. And in that case, you might have to tweak things a little bit. But let's just say the majority of people, that's a chemical reaction that happens in the body. We know that. We've known that for decades and decades and decades. We know that if you have saturated fats, now this is something that's often not talked about. And this is why keto can be so detrimental to a lot of people. When you eat too much saturated fat, that saturated fat will actually dull your muscles' insulin receptors and cause you to become insulin resistant. This is interesting because this is the thing you don't want.
Thank you for saying this, because internally, I kid you not, I like cringe every time we talk about keto. I feel like it can be like for a small percentage of people at the right moment in time, maybe it's helpful. But most of the time, I feel like it's doing long-term damage that we're not considering.
Okay, let me break it down here. I'm going to
Yes,
give you
please.
and your listeners everything you ever need to know. I'm going to talk about why keto and fasting are two of the worst ideas, period. I'm going to talk about when and how they used to be used before they got commercialized so that it was actually helping you instead of hurting you. And I will show you how you can create a fat-burning state all the time without keto. Okay, this is going to be.
Let's do it.
I want to also explain, in doing so, you will optimize your health, because in doing so, you will literally balance your hormones. Here's what happens. There's 5 things that happen when you put your body in the thermogenic state. And if you're struggling with fertility, whether it's diet-based or weight-based, you need to lose body fat or something's off, this works every time. It's absolutely incredible. By the way, Steph, who I talked about earlier, she came back when she was trying to get pregnant again because she knew it was so effective, and she knew it made her so healthy during the pregnancy and allowed her to bounce back after. So both of her kids that she had, she made sure we worked closely together, and it was fantastic. Okay, but 5 things happen. When you go into the thermogenic state, which is natural, by the way, unlike the ketogenic state, which you have to fight to get into. Thermogenic state, you get into within a week of just eating enough and not over-exercising. And the only way to get out of the thermogenic state is if you starve yourself or you over-exercise. I mean, it's very difficult. But 5 things happen. Number 1, your energy goes through the roof in a very sustained way all day long. I had a client who had joined my program, and after the first week, we had gotten on a call on a Monday. I said, how'd the first week go? How was your weekend? And she goes, oh my gosh, I cleaned my whole house. She goes, I haven't had this much energy in years. I even unpacked all the boxes that have been in my basement for 2 years. This feels amazing. And it's an incredible feeling. The second thing is your body burns fat all the time. And I'm going to explain how this works. So stay tuned. The third thing is your appetite normalizes. You're actually hungry when you wake up. You're hungry when it's time to eat. You're not hungry when it's not. If someone's right now listening and you wake up in the morning and you could go till like noon, 1, 2 o'clock before you start getting hungry, I'm going to tell you, that's actually not a good sign. There's a lot of people online that are like, that's really great. No, it means your metabolism is virtually nothing.
Well, so can I pause you there? Because I have went through my own journeys with all of this. And I can tell you that in my follicular state, I can go longer without eating. Whereas in my luteal state, I like wake up starving. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that could, like from my studies, that's relatively normal and can be supportive to hormonal balance. But I'm curious what you think about it.
It's interesting because if you're just never hungry, I'm talking about never. I mean, never. Mm-hmm. That is a sign that your metabolism is just struggling and limping along.
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
And so you'll notice that you actually start getting hungry more frequently when it's time to eat. The fourth thing that happens is your cravings vanish. And there's 2 reasons for that. One is because you're not depriving yourself.
You're not starving yourself of vital food group.
But the other reason is because your hormones balance. Okay. Mm-hmm. And this is number 5. And this is the order your hormones balance in, and they balance really quick. The first thing that balances is your insulin and blood sugar levels, okay, within a week. The second thing that balances is your cortisol levels. And I can explain why if you remind me to. Mm-hmm. The third thing that balances is your thyroid levels, okay? There's something that's called, and this is a medical term, it's called diet-induced hypothyroidism. Okay. This is a term that's been around since the 90s.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah.
And what they found, there's dozens and dozens of studies that show this. If you have a diet that's too low in carbohydrates for too long, it will lower your T3 production and cause hypothyroidism. If you have a diet that's too high in fat for too long, even healthy fats, it will lower your T4 production and cause hypothyroidism. And this is why I've seen more people in the last 3 years, mostly women, because women's hormones are more sensitive than men's, who have hypothyroidism than I had in my previous 17 years combined, because they're all doing keto and they're smashing their thyroid. Okay. So your insulin, then your cortisol, then your thyroid hormones balance. Now, along with that, your ghrelin and leptin balance. Now, this is important because if you're listening, ghrelin is your craving hormone. Okay. When that balances, you stop having cravings. And leptin not only is your fullness hormone, it also signals to your body to start burning fat. So if you balance all these hormones, your cravings vanish, your energy goes up, you start burning fat all the time, and your other hormones have a chance to balance the estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And I have had clients, in fact, I've had several women in the last month who said, one was in Canada and said, Stu, this is really bizarre. This past weekend, for the first time in 10 years, I've actually started sleeping through the night and waking up to my alarm clock. I said, this is a good sign. This means your hormones are actually balancing. Her moodiness was completely gone and she was sleeping better than ever. I had another client who was taking progesterone cream because she had gotten prescribed low energy and all these other things. Within 8 weeks, off the cream, because now that her body was functioning the way it was supposed to be, her body could actually produce the progesterone that it wasn't producing because it was the cortisol levels were too high. The insulin was all over the map. This is crazy. It's huge. It's so vital. Now with keto, aside from the diet-induced hypothyroidism, again, I want to go back when people do keto with the meat-based, obviously there's plant-based keto too. There's a whole other slew of problems there. But what happens is a person eats all these meats, bacon and ribs and stuff, and they're getting tons of saturated fat. And unbeknownst to them, they're causing their muscles to become insulin resistant, which actually just causes your whole body to become
Why
insulin
is that? How does that happen?
I'm going to explain that in just a second because there's a process that's a phenomenal process. And this is how I work with clients to get them into the thermogenic state. Now, I have 20 years of research here. I simplify it because I geek out on this stuff, but not everyone does. But the other problem with the keto is when you do that, you're not eating any carbs. And this is why a lot of people, when they stop doing keto, will blow up like a balloon. And I will tell you that I've had several clients in the last year, actually a fair amount, that said, look, I cannot eat carbohydrates. If I eat carbohydrates, I blow up like a balloon. And they had been doing keto or fasting or cutting the carbs. So what they had done unbeknownst to them is cause their body to become insulin resistant. And this is why when they ate the carbs again, which everyone will eventually, they didn't just gain 1 or 2 pounds. They'd gain like 8, 9, 10, 12 pounds. Okay. And then it took them forever to pull it off. When you're in the thermogenic state, in fact, I just had a client who got back from a 2-week birthday vacation. And normally she would gain 8, 9, 10 pounds. And it would take her months to get it off. She gained 2.5 pounds and it came off in 2 days. Okay. Because her body's now functioning the way it's supposed to. When you don't cut foods and then you go out and you cheat by eating the food, your body's already used to them. You're working with your body. It's already burning fat. You asked, how does this work? Okay. Well, let me explain how it works. Here's how the body works. Anytime you eat any food, okay, even fats to some extent, you're going to increase your blood glucose levels. Fats can be broken down into glucose. It just takes a little bit longer. But anytime you eat foods, you're going to increase your blood glucose levels. And when that happens, your body says, hey, we need to regulate this blood glucose to our normal range, which is like 75 to 110 is where it likes it. So it releases insulin from your pancreas. And these little insulin hormones essentially are like little shuttle buses. And they take the glucose molecules and they try to shuttle them out of the bloodstream. It can put them in 3 spots. Muscles as muscle glycogen. This is good. The liver as liver glycogen. This is good. Or your fat cells as fat. This is bad. Okay. So what happens is this. there are two things that cause insulin resistance, two main things. One is the saturated fats. That's a big one because it actually dulls your muscles' receptors. So what happens is the insulin's trying to put the glucose into the muscles and the receptors are so dull it can't get it in. Okay, it's like the keyhole is plugged. And so the blood glucose continues to rise and your body panics and it releases even more insulin and it ends up shuttling it into the fat cells and it releases an enzyme called LPL. This is bad. It stands for lipoprotein lipase. And this particular enzyme makes the fat cells extra sensitive to the insulin. And then it also puts like a shield around the fat cells that makes them very difficult for your body to use for energy. So essentially this LPL makes it very easy to store fat, very hard to burn fat. The other thing that will increase insulin resistance is when you cause insulin spikes often. Because when your blood glucose rises too quickly and then the body releases a flood of insulin, it is still trying to push that insulin and glucose into the muscles and liver. However, imagine trying to water your lawn with a fire hose. There's a lot of runoff. Okay, the grass can't absorb it. This same thing happens. The spike in insulin pushes so much insulin in there, it can't get it into the muscles fast enough. So the overflow starts going into the fat cells and you get the LPL again. This is bad. All right. And this is what causes you to get fat and wrecks your body. Okay. Now, if you're tracking with me, you're thinking, well, okay, how do I prevent an insulin spike? How do I get my muscles more sensitive? This is the key. This is the thermogenic state. When you eat the right foods in the right combination at the right time of day, number one is you normalize those insulin levels, period. And you also trigger something called glucagon. This is really interesting. Nobody talks about this either because they don't know about it. Okay, when you're eating the right foods in the right combination, not only will you lower your insulin or keep your insulin and blood sugar stable, you'll trigger glucagon. What is glucagon? Glucagon is also released by the pancreas. It does the opposite as insulin. It's the like yin and yang of insulin and glucagon, okay? It will actually, if you're in the right condition, glucagon will actually go into your body and it pulls things from your body and puts them into the bloodstream, whereas insulin takes things from the bloodstream and puts them into your body. Glucagon will go in, and when glucagon levels are present and higher, your body releases another enzyme called HSL, hormone sensitive lipase. This is the opposite of LPL. HSL makes it possible for your body to burn the fat cells, and the glucagon will go in to your fat cells and pull the fatty acids out of your fat cells and put them in your bloodstream for energy. And voila, you are now burning fat at times of rest, i.e. in between meals and while you sleep, while having glycogen reserves for your body to use for energy in times of action and activity and these types of things. This is the holy grail of where you want your body. Your body uses glycogen when you're active, but when you're not active, it's burning fat automatically. This is the thermogenic state. And what happens is your blood sugar balances and all the other hormones balance like I talk about. And when you train correctly or work out correctly, that's when you increase your muscle's capacity for glycogen so it can store more and the glucose and insulin never actually make it to your fat cells. And you increase the sensitivity to insulin. And this is how it works.
Science broken down, y'all, right here, right now.
And so that's why I say the combination of foods, this is why, by the way, people can restrict calories and still get fat. Because even though they're restricting calories, they're still causing massive chronic spikes in their insulin, which causes the body to push all of the blood glucose into their fat cells. All they're doing though, and this is what happens with most diets, and this is why Stephanie was so glad she came to me, because when the doctor said, you need to lose weight, and she looked at different diets, she was, I can't starve myself. That's not going to be healthy. She had enough foresight to know that when you do it this way, you don't burn off your body's muscle. Most diets, what happens is this: someone will lose 10 pounds. They'll lose 5 pounds of body fat and 5 pounds of muscle. Okay. Now their metabolism is slower. They're more insulin resistant. And because they're doing it wrong and they're not combining the right foods and they keep spiking their insulin, then they gain the weight back. They gain 8 or 9 pounds of fat back of the 10 they lost, and maybe 1 pound of muscle, if that, maybe not even. And so over time, their weight stays the same. We're talking over years. Let's say they're 150 pounds. Their weight stays at 150, but their body fat is going up and their muscle is going down, and they're making their body worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And this is the vicious cycle. And every time they try to lose weight, it's harder. It's more detrimental on their body. They have to go more extreme. And this is why Ashley had found herself in a position where she was only eating 1,200 or less calories a day, exercising for 2 hours, couldn't lose a pound. And when we changed everything over, she was losing weight, lost 37 pounds in 3 months, and was eating 50% more calories and exercising a fraction, only 45 minutes a day of what she was before. And she could actually maintain it. For the last 20 years, I've worked mostly with women in their 50s and 40s. Okay, well, this is like the impossible demographic to lose weight. This is what happens. This is when you understand how the body works, not only do you get results quickly, it should feel so fun and just so good because your body is getting what it needs. And this is the difference. This is the difference.
Yeah. Amazing. Few questions. I'm assuming, based on what you just said, that you don't want to be snacking multiple times. The whole 6 meals a day theory is so far out of the window. Am I right?
No, you couldn't be more wrong. And let me explain why. Yeah. If you're listening and you're like, well, how do you know it works? Well, aside from 20 years of experience, okay, not long ago, I had a client with type 1 diabetes, okay, the genetic type. You cannot get rid of it. And she was only eating twice a day. I'm going to explain why fasting is a bad idea. She was trying the fasting to control her blood sugar. And when we got on the phone and we're talking, she goes, look, I need to lose 50 pounds. She's 52 at the time. She had a bunch of injuries. She was a realtor, so she was always on the go. And she said her blood sugar levels were all over the map, inconsistent from day to day, even if she ate the same thing every day. Well, we did the process, okay? We did get her body in the thermogenic state, and she was eating 5 times a day.
But I'm mindful to not go too far because she has type 1 diabetes. So right off the bat, she needs to have a different way to control her insulin.
But normally, when you have type 1 diabetes, the only way to control it is through insulin, okay? Rarely through food, because your body cannot produce insulin. So if you eat anything wrong, you either have a crash or you have a spike. So they usually now, most type 1 diabetics wear a constant glucose and insulin pump so that it just regulates for them. Okay, well, after 4 weeks, Barbie was using 1/8 the amount of insulin, 1/8, okay? Because her insulin and blood sugar levels were so stable. And she even said to me, she goes, I thought I wasn't supposed to eat as much because that caused spikes. And it does. If you don't combine if you don't have the right combination. Yes. Right. What happens is this, and this is the same with fasting. Okay, if you look at fasting, the only professional athletes who regularly fast are sumo wrestlers because they know, and they've known for centuries, that's the fastest way to gain weight. Why? There's 2 reasons. And you know this too, doctors know this, we intuitively know this, but yet we still go against this. Your body has a certain threshold of what it can absorb at one time. Nutrients, vitamins, minerals. All right, if you take too much vitamin C, your body will absorb whatever it can absorb and it pees out the remainder. And so that excess that you just ingested is essentially wasted. It's no different with food, Amatma. We have a certain amount of protein, carbs, and fats that our body can absorb at once, period. Anything above that, the body doesn't pee it out, it stores it as fat. That's just how the body works. So if you eat big meals, and this is why sumo wrestlers do this, they'll eat a massive meal. They're trying to go as high above the threshold as possible so their body stores a bunch of body fat and they put weight on. Okay, well, bodybuilders know this too. And I know that you and your listeners don't want to look like a bodybuilder. Okay, but they have the lowest levels of body fat on the planet. They will eat, and this is what most people don't know. A male bodybuilder will eat the same amount of food in a day as a sumo wrestler. The difference is the bodybuilder splits it 6, 7, 8 meals because they're trying to stay under the threshold so that they can feed their muscles without putting on excess body fat. Now, here's the other thing. The other thing that causes a spike with your insulin is too big of a meal. Big meals cause insulin spikes, even if it's the right foods. Even protein, even fats, they cause insulin spikes. So when you're doing fasting, and a person like you or me or people listening, you're not going to be able to go and get enough nutrients that your body actually needs to function optimally in 1 or 2 or 3 meals without going over the threshold and then having each of those meals cause an insulin spike. You need probably 4 at least, and preferably 5. Now, if you go around snacking, like Amatma said earlier, and you're snacking on fruit, you're going to spike your insulin, okay? Or you're snacking on chips or pretzels or something like this, and you're not combining the right foods, then yes, you are going to cause more spikes. And this is, again, a common misconception. And this is why we're getting half the story, because what's happening is people are basing these recommendations off poor eating habits. So they say, don't snack. Well, what they should say is don't snack on carbohydrates. Because if you snack and you combine the right foods, meaning you get in adequate carbs, fats, proteins, and fiber in a snack, your blood sugar isn't going to spike. In fact, it's going to regulate, but you're going to feed your body with the nutrients in a small enough amount that it can absorb all of them and utilize them to optimize the body.
All right. Lots of interesting new information. So that's awesome.
And now look, here's the other thing that's really aggravating me lately. And I'm just going to get this off my chest on your show. Okay. Is people are calling themselves research-based coaches or this or that. Mm-hmm. And what's happening is we're throwing away 20 years, 30 years, in some cases since the 70s, you're going to have 50 years of practical knowledge and basing our decisions off certain studies that are using a 30-person sample size that is construed of mostly men. And not only may that be giving us inaccurate data, it might be giving us the opposite data. This is a statistical phenomenon known as the law of large numbers. So we have people that are saying, hey, this study shows that if you're in a fasted state, your HGH levels go up and it's good for fat burning and anti-aging. Yeah, well, you can still get in that state eating all day long. It takes about 2.5 to 3 hours, so long as you're combining the right foods and the right combination in the right time of day. So you only get a snippet, a half of the story. And someone who's listening to all these things and trying to apply them all, they're probably burned out. They're probably confused. They're probably frustrated because there's so much conflicting. What I've learned is practical 20 years of application, trial and error, testing different things, seeing how it impacts a client's blood sugar, hormones, weight, energy, mood, the whole deal. With a few exceptions of people who have autoimmune or thyroid issues or gut issues, the protocol works very seamlessly. The only difference with someone who has one of those issues I just mentioned is oftentimes they have a food sensitivity that won't show up on a sensitivity test, but is causing their antibodies to flare or whatever's going on in their gut, whether it's a fungal or bacterial issue, causing that to flare, and that can wreak havoc on their body.
All right. So before we bring to a close, I want to leave our listeners with what are some good snacks that are not going to raise your blood sugar, not going to increase insulin resistance, leptin resistance, all of those things?
It's a good question. So let me start by saying, what are the worst snacks? Okay. All right. Because that's easier because there's a lot of amazing snacks. Let me tell you the worst combination. The worst combination for this is combining carbohydrates and fats. So let me give you some common snacks that you should never have. Well, never is a strong word. That you should avoid if you're trying to lose weight or control your blood sugar, okay? Fruit and nut butters, terrible idea. Fruit on its own, terrible idea. Avocado toast, bad idea. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Macaroni and cheese. Okay, this would be like the worst of the worst kind of combinations. Okay.
Basically, the standard American diet. This is basically what kids at my school eat,
Yeah, right. I mean,
right? Like, this is
one of
what
the
we're
things,
teaching them.
one of the things that a lot of my clients are eating lately is nut butter with fruit and avocado toast, because that's being touted as being extremely healthy. It's not. That's one of the worst combinations. Nut butters are not protein. I got news for you. They're fats. Okay. Fruits have the simplest sugar. They have monosaccharides in them. Now there's phytogens and there's some fiber in the fruits, but essentially it's going to raise your blood sugar. Don't grind your vegetables and up in juice, because as you mentioned earlier, any juice, whether it's vegetable or fruit, whether you make it fresh or you buy it, is going to increase and spike your insulin, just how it is. Okay. So the juicing craze, let's hope that we're getting over that, is increasing your insulin, spiking your insulin. It's not good. Now, what are some good combinations? Well, you need a certain amount of protein to get the glucagon release that I talked about earlier. How much? This is based on your lean body mass. Okay. This is what it's based on. How much your body can tolerate. What's the minimum amount you need? The minimum amount, I think, is somewhere around 20 grams per meal of protein to get that glucagon and the HSL present to actually liberate those lipids and get them into your blood so you burn fat. What kinds of carbs? Well, you want the more complex, the better. So what kind of snack? Let me give you.
What do you snack? What are your snacks through the day?
I don't snack. See, I don't consider things snacks. A meal is a meal to me. And I eat 6 meals a day. My clients will eat normally 4 or 5, but they all look the same. And so something that my clients love, I'll just give you this recipe because they've just fallen in love with it, is egg whites and rice, and you cook them together, and then you put coconut aminos on there, and it's like a egg white fried rice, and it's got a nice balance, high in fiber. You can add some vegetables to it if you want. That's a great snack. It's pretty simple, and my clients absolutely love how it tastes. So that's an example.
Great. Well, thank you so much for shedding a ton of myths in the world of food and weight loss and fertility. Yeah, I'm just really grateful for you to be here today and share all of your wisdom. How can our listeners get in touch with you?
Great question. So I'm going to give a free gift to all your listeners. It's actually really special. If they go to StuSchaefer.com/fertility, they will be able to get my fat loss masterclass and my fat loss blueprint and my thermogenic quiz for free, all for free. So they can take the quiz, they can watch the masterclass and read the blueprint. StuSchaefer.com/fertility. And I'll spell Stu Schaefer for you. It's StuSchaefer.com/fertility. You can also find me at StuSchaefer.com. Would love to chat. Would love to hear what everyone's up to. It's been an honor chatting with you. This has been a lot of fun.
Amazing. Thanks for being here. Was that an amazing episode or what? Make sure to check our show notes so that you can link up with our guests. And if you're not a part of our secret Fertile AF community, you can join for free via the link in our show notes. Last but not least, have you showed us some love lately? It would mean the world to us if you could share and review our podcast. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time on Egg Meets Sperm. Peace.